God damn it, this show is good. How you going? Welcome to my The Expanse Season 2 Episode 2 Doors and Corners review. So I was informed by some of my wonderful commenters that Season 2 Episodes 1 and 2 were meant to be watched back to back. Apparently they flow together really well, so looks like I messed that up. But with that ringing endorsement, I guess I'm expecting big things from episode 2. So the UN is still bickering about Mars' intentions with the destruction of Phoebe. Admiral Wynne says that Phoebe was a joint operation between multiple Earth corporations, so that any destruction of it is basically an act of war. Because apparently the only confirmation that Phoebe was abandoned was supplied by Mars. So they don't trust it. So Admiral Souther suggests that they stop protecting supply lines from Jupiter or something as some form of a trade embargo. And that doesn't go down too well with everyone else. And then Avasarala sneakily flicks off some info to Ehrenreich about a radar station on Deimos, which could be used as a form of payback. So then Souther basically says, look, I won't support any kind of attack. So then he's told if he doesn't want to perform his duties, well, he knows what he can do. To which he says, you can't fire me, I quit. It's a very American thing to do. Because here, you don't quit. You wait until they fire you and you get all that severance pay. Aching! So the Rocinante makes it back to Tycho, and Fred Johnson wants to know where they've been all this time and what the hell happened on Phoebe that caused it to blow up. And Nagata tells him that they were on Eros and they decided that they were going to go back to Tycho and see what Fred Johnson wanted to do next. So they tell him about the protomolecule and how the testing is being performed on the entire citizenry of Eros, and that the data is being transferred to a disused communications relay out in the belt. But Fred Johnson tells them that this apparently abandoned relay station has a stealth ship protecting it. That's not good. So Kamal's trying to help these refugees that they rescued from Eros settle into their new life on Tycho Station, and he's trying to get Amos to help him, and Amos just doesn't want a bar of it. So Kamal and Amos wind up at a bar and they have a bit of a discussion, and this is the biggest letdown of this episode, is that they do that trope where someone will have a big monologue and the camera will zoom in on them, and then once they finish their monologue they go like, you know what I'm saying? And the person that was sitting next to them is gone. I felt that kind of like cheapened the episode a bit. So Holden and Nagata are doing some maintenance and inventory on the Rocinante's guns, and they work out that they're burning through the ammo fairly quickly, and they're a bit worried that they're not just going to be able to get ammo for this ship again because it's a Mars naval frigate. Like, they don't do home deliveries of ammo for their ships, but at least they use metric for their spanners. And Holden's a bit worried about Amos finding out about Holden and Nagata's relationship turning sexual. So then Johnson's trying to round up 50 troops for a boarding party, and he's trying to find people with combat experience. And then Kay Nickel, who's apparently the Black Sky OPA guy that tried to assassinate Avasarala. He's trying to stir up dissent among the workers on Tycho, because he believes that the OPA should be run by and for Belters. And because Johnson's Earther, he doesn't think that he's got the best interest of Belters at heart. But in this scene, he indeed confirms that he hacked a drone to take out Avasarala. And Johnson notices that he's got a gun in his waistband of his pants. So when he pulls the gun and tries to take out Johnson, Johnson's ready for him and smacks his head and kicks his ass. And then Johnson just throws this guy into the airlock and then spaces him. See ya! So Johnson then tells his staff that Eros wasn't a plague, but it was actually an attack on the belt, and now they're going after those who would attack the Belters. And he tells them that he's trying to unite the faction. And then we get this sweet space battle between the Rocinante and the stealth ship. And the Rocinante loses and is destroyed. No! But luckily it's just a training sim to let Kamal work out the best plan of attack. So they decide that the Rocinante needs to either destroy or distract the stealth ship so that the breaching pods can be deployed to take over the station. So then Holden tells Miller that he should sit this one out because it's going to get a bit crazy. And Miller's like, yeah, why would I even want to be there? But then Miller tells him that he's actually going to be in the assault team. And Miller says, I'm going to go grab my stuff and clear out my room. And Holden says to him, well, you know, maybe you should leave it there. You can rejoin us after this attack. So they're getting to be best buds. And then back on Earth, Avasarala is catching up with former Admiral Souther at a bar, and she informs him that he's been transferred to the Jupiter fleet. And she tells him that something had to basically get blown up to satisfy everyone, and Deimos was the target with the least casualties. And then Avasarala asked Souther about Fred Johnson, and Souther says that Fred Johnson had information withheld from him by the Fleet Command. Fleet Command withheld the information from Johnson that the protesters on Anderson Station had actually surrendered. And he reckons that that was because Fleet Command wanted to send a message to the Belters, like, stay in your box or else we're going to destroy you. So it turns out that Avasarala's spy Kotya was sitting in the background listening in, and he wanders over and Avasarala tells him that she wants to send a secret communique to Fred Johnson, and she wants to have a meeting with Fred Johnson. So it's treason then! And then we're back out in space, and the freighter Guy Molinari is en route to the spin station in the belt with the Rocinante following in its radar shadow. And the breaching pods that they've created are basically just 2 shipping containers with rockets strapped to them. So Miller's in one of these pods, and someone yells out to him, "Stay away from the Aquaman!" That was Aquaman, not Aquaman. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't that Diego, the guy that was left in the asteroid belt when his Uncle Mateo rammed that Mars patrol? Or was it the guy on Ceres who was siphoning the water? Anyway. So the Rocinante has its air vented. Apparently this is so they don't suffer from explosive decompression if they get punctured. And their plan is that they'll pretend that the Rocinante is just a piece of stray cargo that's fallen off this cargo ship. And that they're going to radio out to say that, hey, we're just coming over to get our bit of loose cargo, don't worry about us. Oh, and it's both Diego and the guy who siphoned the water. It's the same guy. But unfortunately, the stealth ship goes after the Guy Molinari instead of the Rocinante, so the Roci has to then take out the missiles that are being fired at the Guy Molinari. And meanwhile, the Rocinante is getting absolutely peppered with holes from the cannons on the stealth ship. And there's this sweet effect where Kamal decides that he has to maneuver around, and there's some hard acceleration, and the sparks from the hole that one of the rail cannon, when it punches a hole in the hull, leaves like this trail of sparks. And when the Rocinante changes direction, the sparks all like change direction in the ship. It's a pretty good effect. But in the hail of bullets, one of the thrusters of the Rocinante gets taken out, so Kamal decides he has to hide behind the space station for some repairs. So Amos is like, I'm going to go repair it, and the guard is like, don't, you'll get killed. And Holden's like, well, if we don't repair it, we're all going to get killed, so let's go. And if Kamal has to do some sort of a maneuver while Amos is walking around, he'll just get smashed into the walls. And the breaching pods are away! So Amos finds the leak and is fixing it when Fred announces that the station has its own gun. It's some sort of a gun to take out asteroids. And apparently this kind of gun won't really hurt a ship, but it'll mess up a tin can, so they have to protect the pods. But as soon as they come out from behind the station, the stealth ship's waiting for them and starts shooting at them. And by then it's too late and a pod gets destroyed. So in the meantime, Amos manages to fix the thruster, and the Rocinante can maneuver around and take out the station's gun. And then it swings around and turns the stealth ship into Swiss cheese. It was a bit too easy if you ask me. So one of the breaching pods makes it to the station, and they punch a hole in the wall, and they all get out, and it turns out the station's basically empty, except for a small bit of resistance. And poor old Diego gets shot right in the face. Poor guy. But then Miller finds out that the occupants are actually using gel rounds. He reckons that they look more like prison guards than actually any kind of security. And it seems odd to me that they would have a stealth ship outside, but then inside they've got nothing. And Kamal finds out that one of the guys on the exploding pod was one of the dudes that they rescued from Eros, so he might be a little bit sad about that. And then Miller finds this group of guys sitting in a circle, like playing VR games, virtual reality. And they're pretty much unresponsive. Like if you go up to them and like, yo, hey, ho, they just like, meh, 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 meh. Well, they don't make that noise. They're just doing this. Like Minority Report. So Miller unplugs them and they all skits out. Like they're just screaming, like, turn it back on, and give us it back. It's like, are they on some sort of a drug or something? Like, is it feeding them drugs and they need it? But unfortunately, they all get shot, bar one, because these boarders are all just randos. And it turns out that there's some sort of a scientific team. So Miller goes into a room alone. Doors and corners, remember to watch them. And in there is Dresden, the guy who planted the protomolecule on Eros. And then Johnson and Holden enter, and Johnson basically says that this station is now under the control of the OPA. So Dresden then tries to bribe Johnson to go away. Like, what will it take? Weapons? Money? So Holden tells Dresden that he wants them to create a vaccine, and Dresden's like, no, that goes against everything we've been trying to achieve here. So what were they trying to achieve? So Dresden says that Eros was infected to save everyone, apparently, and the protomolecule can absorb other forms of life and use them to evolve. So apparently Dresden wants to modify humanity so we can live in space without spacesuits or under the crushing pressure of a gas giant. So Dresden reckons that the protomolecule was sent to attack humanity, and that all the research will be destroyed if anyone but him tries to access it. And he agrees to Fred Johnson's terms. He says he doesn't care who's in control as long as he gets to do his research unrestricted. And Fred's okay with this as long as he gets to know everything about it. Ninkablamo! Miller just straight up executes Dresden. Plus 2 more rounds for good measure. And this episode ends with Holden and Johnson looking on in absolute shock. So this was a brilliant episode. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. It had just the right amount of political intrigue and full-on action. Like, my heart was racing during the approach to that spin station. And my nails were being bitten at a frantic speed when they were boarding that station. And this episode raises more fascinating questions, like what was their plan for turning the protomolecule from a weapon into an asset? And what were those scientists doing in their VR helmets? And why were they so enraged when they were unplugged? But now with Dresden dead and the files encrypted, how are they going to proceed? Maybe Avasarala's spy Kotya will be able to decrypt it. I mean, once again, the effects are absolutely fantastic and the costume designs are out of this world. No pun intended. And the sets are really well constructed. They're not like just some dark warehouse with some spotlights here and there and a drop cloth. In fact, I'm going to watch the next episode tonight. I can't wait. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review 1/10 of the amount that I enjoyed watching this episode. Wait a minute, does that mean you're going to give it a 0.9 out of 10? Anyway, I'm out of here. Take it easy. See you next week.